I think
What's that?
when you know events that have multiple pens, A, B, C, D, how chat used to be separate.
Yeah.
It appears that they are no
Wow.
longer separate. This event.
I think it's an option. You can have it all together.
Okay. Hopefully we're not messing up Jason's stream in this channel. I'm planning on being able, just chilling in here while I do a race. Is that gonna mess you up, Jason?
I don't think he's got Discord working.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
What's the race you're doing, Justin?
Kiss Pacific Crit. 7 laps of volcano.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the time zones. Welcome to the feed zone. You can typically find the feed zone at 5:45 U.S. Pacific, 8:45 U.S. Eastern, and 13:45 GMT. So if you're watching this live or as a recording, thank you for joining us today. My name is Jason Flores. I go by JFlow here on Zwift. You can typically find me on course doing a workout or possibly some of our really interesting rides that we have here on Zwift Live, as well as by TeamODZ. So definitely check our website out at TeamODZ.com and check out our ride calendar there. There's definitely a lot of great rides, great events, really great ride leaders. So definitely check that out. Before we get started, just a quick medical disclaimer that the only purpose of this live stream is to inform, and it's not a substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified professional, and that this live stream is provided on the understanding that it does not constitute medical or professional advice or services. The goals of this live stream are typically to present articles in the current media covering food and hydration and how it relates to endurance sports. And to open a dialogue for viewers to ask questions and to get advice and to talk about their experiences.
I got you.
So what we'll do is we'll typically take an article by one of our partners or in the popular media that has been sent in, and then we will actually kind of pick it apart, present it, and kind of get some information from it. Typically, it has to do with hydration or fueling. Today, we're talking a little bit off topic, but something we have touched upon before in the talks that we've had about recovery. So let me go ahead and introduce that now. So the topic we have is actually going to be about how sleep affects your performance, and definitely comes into one of the top things that we need to think about as far as recovery comes into play, along with your protein, along with rest, and along with like all of the gear, compression gear, and all that sort of things. And we've covered that in a couple slides or in a couple talks beforehand, but today we are going to be talking about it a little bit more deeply. The article that we will be presenting today is from Data Driven Athlete, one of our partners that you could actually find and hear more information on during our What's Up with Power with Justin Wagner on Wednesdays. Nate Dunn is a great resource there at Data Driven Athlete. But today's article is actually by one of their coaches, and his name is Matt Chattelong. And he's actually working on his master's degree in exercise science. He's actually coaching and racing his bike for the Herbalife, presented by Mark Pro, Nature's Bakery Elite Cycling Team. So this is an article that he actually put together for Data Driven Athlete. So a couple tips or a couple things that we'll be covering today. We're going to be talking about sleep and how it relates to athletes. Kind of what's normal as far as sleep is concerned, and the effect over time of decreased sleep, out of ordinary sleep conditions, and how to get better sleep, and essentially where the rubber meets the road as far as what we're looking for to get the best sleep and what we can do to make it better, and what are the consequences per se. So we'll go ahead and get started for our first part of the topic, which is sleep in athletes. So as we know, good sleep plays a role in a key role in performances, and a lot of times you'll find that your best performances follow a good night's sleep. But in a lot of cases, there's days that we forget, are usually preceded by periods of bad sleep. Maybe leading up to an event or something like that, or sometimes even the night of an event can actually leave us kind of with a bad night's sleep. And we'll kind of learn some more information about that today. So on the Data-Driven Athlete blog, they're looking to just kind of present sleep and its means in performance in both the long term and the short term as far as how it relates to our performance. So the question is, what's normal? Ask yourself, how much did you sleep last night? This is on at 5:45 Pacific. That means for us Pacific Coast riders, we are trying to get to sleep at 9 or 10 o'clock, trying to get as much sleep as we can. But normal, on average, as far as research and surveys concerned, America sleeps an average of just over 7 hours per night. So the National Sleep Foundation actually is recommending anywhere between 7 and 9, where the recommendation for 8 hours comes from. But then the question is what about athletes? How is that different? And do we need more? Do we need less? Thing about it right now is there's limited research into the requirements for sleep in athletes versus sedentary populations. But it is reasonable to think that athletes that require more rest and sleep than their non-athlete counterparts. So essentially, more sleep would be better, obviously, if you could. Obviously, there's other things that get in the way as far as family, work, stress, other things like that. So the authors are recommending anywhere between 9 and 11 hours per night. If any of us, or a lot of us who are here, are definitely time crunched, 9 to 11 hours of sleep is definitely ambitious. So the question is how many hours do you get on average? And if the number is less than 7 or 9, you're probably not alone. A lot of athletes on average sleep less than this 7 to 9 window with the current research. So a lot of us are getting that, 6 hours, 6 and some change. So what does this do over time? So let's say you routinely sleep less than 7 or 9. You're doing the 5, the 4, the 6 hours a night before workouts. At this rate, whether you're not an athlete or not, research has shown that you essentially enter some dangerous territory. So sleep is regularly restricted to less than 6 hours a night. They have found in the research that it has substantial disturbances in cognitive ability, your ability to think and process, glucose metabolism, appetite regulation, and immune function. Essentially, you are having trouble to control your appetite, you can get sick easier, you're having trouble to kind of burn the glucose and kind of get your energies up, and as well as think clearly. So really 4 big things when you're getting less than 6 hours a night. So that kind of marker of 6 hours or more is kind of the number that a lot of riders or a lot of athletes kind of hinge on. So prolonged periods of such disturbances can induce chronic state of mental fatigue, which can negatively affect exercise performance, and prolonged reduction in sleep quality and quantity can result in autonomic nervous system, essentially giving you almost the symptoms of overtraining.
Like
and that sort of thing. So the bottom line is if you're sleeping less than 7 or 8 hours of night, your training quality over time can definitely suffer. So one thing that I typically have a conversation with athletes about along this lines is almost cycling this sleep. There are times that we have rest days or days that are less intense. On those days, getting more rest, as well as kind of understanding that you're going to need more rest so that you can recover on those days is important. So on the days that, let's say you need to get some work in and you have a limited amount of time, then it's important to understand that you may get shorter sleep on those days, but making sure that you offset that on other days to get the 7 to 9 hours of sleep if you're able to. So really interesting there. So as far as things out of the ordinary, the topic kind of covers if you're an athlete and you're lucky to sleep the 9 to 11 hours a night, at some point you're going to occasionally deal with situations that interrupt with your normal routine. Meaning like you're flying or driving to a race that's further away from home, that starts super early, but it's not just at the local coffee shop. So making trips like this sort of thing, along with pre-race nervousness, anxiety, interrupted sleep patterns, and unfamiliar sleeping arrangements. All these have to do with just the activity of sport, and these early mornings can definitely affect your sleep quality and quantity. So being able to be adaptive or to be kind of the way I talked about, there are days that are cycled of, you know, less sleep and more sleep, and being able to have that ability to kind of switch, it could be useful. So I guess in short, essentially they're offering that the conclusive evidence dooming you to failure on a race day after a bad night's sleep, let's say, like you know, you're at a hotel the night before a race, doesn't seem to be correlated with a bad nights of sleep if you're getting the amount of time. So I think it's just important that you're down, you're resting between that time, and it may feel like you're tossing and turning, but in fact there isn't an evidence that connects the two, as long as you're getting the rest that you need. So knowing that you know, the large body of evidence is pointing towards that you'll probably be just fine, you should definitely try to internalize that and give you confidence that you can still perform in the wake of, let's say, a poor night's sleep on the road, or the night before, you know, your A race or an important ride or something like that. But it still needs to be within that recommended rest time of 7 to 9 hours before the event. It's not something that we can shortchange and just do 2 or 3 hours and be done with it. The next point they kind of point out is, how can we get better at sleep? Can we train ourselves the way we train ourselves on the bike or in our sports? And to an extent there is. It doesn't really happen over in one night. It actually takes time, commitment to train yourself to sleep habits, essentially getting yourself ready to go to sleep, and to putting yourself into in an environment that will allow you to get good sleep. So there are a couple tips that they present, pretty interesting. Following these tips could definitely improve your sleep quality and quantity over time, and I'll kind of hit on those here. Some of them involve developing and following a regular bedtime and wake time routine to help utilize your body's natural promotion of sleep. And so what they're hitting on here is similar to, or essentially, the circadian rhythm of a day. The morning time when the sun comes up, getting yourself exposure to the sunlight, letting your body kind of get that turned on light bulb moment to kind of let you know that the body should be awake and ready to go. And then moving to the evening time where the sun goes down, and switching over to filters on, whether it be on your computers or on your cell phones, to kind of decrease the amount of blue light exposure essentially that you're getting, to allow your body to get the signal saying that the sun is going down, it's time for bedtime, time to wind down. So the other option would be to choose daytime naps in order to compensate for the time that you're missing overnight, but you have to choose them carefully, as excessive napping is definitely shown to negatively impact nighttime sleep. So a lot of times in the science that I've seen, essentially any napping that happens after around 2 o'clock in the afternoon can definitely negative affect your nighttime sleep. But before that, you're able to, anywhere in the 10 or 11 o'clock hour, able to kind of get some of those hours back. So that is definitely something pretty interesting in that respect. So the other thing is, you can evaluate the room that you sleep in, preferably removing any devices that can provide light or arouse any cognitive activity. So getting, let's say, an alarm clock that is mostly dark unless you absolutely need to tap it and the light goes on, keeping your cell phone face down so it's not shooting light off all night when you get messages, things like the television and any other electronics in the room, that sort of thing can definitely help you get to sleep if you need to get a really dark room. And then on that respect, or in that respect, there are also records of teams like Team Sky is well documented in getting darkening curtains, taping up all the windows, and doing all these little extra steps to make sure that their riders are getting that dark, cold environment. And that's another component of it, is your temperature. And a lot of the science is showing towards a cooler temperature. It's under 70, with the sweet spot being around 68 degrees to sleep in for optimum recovery and deep sleep. So again, essentially, the last couple tips they have are using stress management techniques such as meditation that can help switch your mind off at bedtime, just to get yourself, done with the day and allow you to kind of move forward and into the sleep session, and then kind of get into deep sleep. So prioritizing additional sleep might also mean that you need to reorganize your schedule to sleep in on some days, like we were talking about, periodizing your sleep, or pushing your typical morning workout later in the afternoon or into the evening. Or sometimes even skipping a morning workout altogether if you need to be to get the rest. And I've definitely done that and gotten calls from athletes early morning who are like, oh my gosh, I just got home. It's been a crazy night with the family, da-da-da-da. And at that point, you're calling it. Morning is done. We're going to move it. We're going to take care of it, get the quality work done another day. So it could be a noteworthy trade for these athletes to sleep in, and frequently in exchange for greater training consistency over time and quality. So quality is the key. Jumping on with 2 hours of sleep and trying to, push out, 100K with everybody can definitely, put a toll on yourself in a bad way. Definitely fitness there, but I think more so kind of mental and just overall fatigue, physically as well as mentally, could be pretty harmful. So I guess in any case, putting it all together to optimize your sleep is one of the foundations for your recovery. So you should this is one of the things that you should keep in your quiver to kind of be able to pull out, along with, how much protein you should be getting, and protein before you go to sleep, and compression gear, and rest, and periodization, and all these things. This should be one of the top things on our list as far as recovery, as sleep is where all of the muscle, as far as rebuilding, recouping, that's when this all happens. So trying to bring it all together, essentially with prolonged sleep restriction or sleeping short periods of time, the quality of training over time is likely to suffer. So if you're just getting, let's say, 4 hours of sleep every day, over time, you're just not going to have the energy to be able to put out the quality efforts that you'd like to get to our endurance goals. You're also a greater risk of infection, like we mentioned, overtraining, and essentially just overall burned out. So long-term consistency in training is just as vital for optimal performance as well it is as consistency in making sure that your routine and all your recovery things are in order. They're both important for the long-term goals to get to a target event or a target goal in your endurance. So just essentially, big picture, consistency is key. On the short term, if we get like one night's bad nights of sleep, it happens. No big deal. It's something that and can definitely weigh on us. If you have toddlers at home, you've got kids awake in the middle of the night, things happen. It's possible that even a night or two of bad sleep together, performance may not even be negatively affected. It's really over time, and that's the one thing to remember. Some other tips or tricks that kind of come to my mind. A lot of times there's people try to calculate different time windows of that they can sleep. And so there are a couple kind of global things that I wanted to share as far as sleep overall. And one of them is the number of hours you sleep before midnight have been found to be more restful and recuperative than the hours you sleep after midnight. So for example, let's say typical athlete sleeps 6 hours. We're looking at the hours between 12 and 6 they're sleeping, versus let's say we take 4 hours, we take 3 hours before, 12, 11, 10, 9 o'clock at night, and they end up waking up at 3 or 4 in the morning, the same 6 hours. The person has found that they sleep before midnight, or those 3 hours before, are more restful or more recuperative than the hours all after midnight, just because of the time change and the circadian rhythms and that sort of thing. And so the other question I typically get is there a number exactly how much that we should be sleeping? And so this kind of pins onto the understanding of sleeping in cycles. And essentially, as cycles are understood, we sleep in 90-minute cycles. So essentially what you could do is you could actually calculate the cycles that you sleep. So there's a cycle that goes, let's see, 4 hours and 45 minutes. And then things like the train can definitely mess up your sleep too, so making sure that that's blocked out, and it is quite well blocked out at the house. I'm actually pretty far out here into the pain cave. So getting back to the point is there are a couple windows. So there is a very short window of 4 hours and 45 minutes, which has been kind of scientifically proven kind of as short sleep or long nap. The next window is 6 hours and 15 minutes. of sleep from when you, close your eyes to go to sleep, but not actually fall asleep. And then the next window is 7 hours and 45 minutes. And that's that kind of sweet spot if you can get it at 7 hours and 45 minutes. I've got athletes kind of along the whole range, but kind of looking at those three zones at say 4:45, 6:15 and 7:45. I've got the most athletes around that 6 hours and 15-minute range, with them cycling up to the 7 hours and 45 minutes on the rest days and the days that they're not riding. So kind of looking at that and really dipping down only into that 4 hour and 45 minute for kind of extreme situations, but staying on those other two zones can definitely make a difference. So that's all I had for today. So essentially we covered sleep and how it relates to athletes, kind of what normal sleep is, the effect over time of decreased sleep, getting out of ordinary sleep conditions and how we can handle that, some really good tips on getting better at sleep, and kind of looking at the long-term and short-term effects as far as training and sleeping and recovery. And then lastly, kind of looking at time windows and the 90-minute window that we are sleeping, and kind of using that or leveraging that to be able to get an idea of how we can sleep a little bit better. There's definitely great apps out there that will allow you to kind of calculate when, like if you were to go to sleep at a certain time and you know what time you want to wake up, it'll tell you the time you need to kind of lay down if you can do it, and kind of the windows. And I definitely find, as a new dad, as running a very busy practice and being part of TeamODZ, time management is definitely really important, and understanding.
Kick him in the shin.
I find that if I were at sometimes to wake up in the middle of a cycle, it's really difficult to get going all throughout the day. But if I were to sacrifice a bit, let's say I was going for 7:45 and I kind of get up around the 6:15, 6:30 mark, like I just get up. I don't try to push for the next 30 minutes and end up in the next cycle. And it tends to be, even though the sleep was shorter, to be kind of more fulfilling and more recuperative. Okay, so if you have any questions, I'm going to go ahead and switch over. I can answer any questions here today about that you have about sleep. I'll get Discord switched over, and any comments here on Zwift Live I can answer as well. So thanks for joining us here on in the feed zone, and I hope to catch everybody on Fridays here. You have the times. I'll put it back up here in just a moment. Here it is. And so it's 5:45 Pacific, 8:45 Eastern, and 13:45 GMT. And hope to see you back next week in the feed zone. All right. So just a couple questions that we were trying to address. I can get the mic going on this side. Let's see. Mic is open. Good. Okay, so just a couple things as far as the information or questions that people had. Specifically, we're looking at melatonin use over to help with jet lag at the day before a race. I think definitely traveling to an event has its challenges. From what I understand in the science, low usage of melatonin to the tune of 1 milligram. I was going to say 1 gram, that's a lot. 1 milligram could be very useful. Obviously, looking at that and looking at that beforehand and trying it, of course, beforehand is really important. So I think trialing that out before you go is of great importance. So make sure that you're definitely trying that. And then let's see. Really quickly, this article was brought to us by Data Driven Athlete. You can actually reach Matt's coaching page on Data Driven Athlete at the address below. So definitely check that out. I'll make sure there's not any other questions. But just to quickly answer, with the use of melatonin to get better sleep, definitely an opportunity there. Just try it out beforehand, just like we do with any other hydration fueling method, and keep it around the 1 milligram amount. Otherwise, it's looking pretty good. Okay, thanks for everybody joining on. Tony, Taya, Joss, Sen, Pat, thanks for all joining on, and everybody that's still on with us today. Join us in the feed zone next Friday, 5:45 Pacific. Thanks for joining in. Have a great day, everybody.
Sorry, Jason, if we came over the top of you. I didn't know you were still doing in the feed zone. I thought you were done.